the Ozempic boom and the Ozempic hype around these drugs, which Ozempic obviously is the diabetes drug, Wegovy is the version for weight loss, but that boom is not stopping or slowing down anytime soon.
So I kind of thought this would be you get it for a few months and then you stop, maybe you go back again, but it just seems like we haven't seen the top of the demand curve yet, have we?
No, we haven't. And that is happening to some degree. I mean, we know that the drop-off rates actually for these drugs are pretty high. I mean, like 50-60% of people don't take them really long-term, more than a year. But at the same time, the demand is not letting up. So some people go back to taking the drugs. There are new prescriptions starting. So that really hasn't slowed down the demand for these drugs yet. But that is something that drug makers are trying to figure out how to keep people on these drugs longer, and whether that's access, improving affordability, making sure that they're not getting cut off by insurance companies, side effects, just figuring out maintenance dosing better. So those are all things that are top of mind still.
So what we previously knew about the weight loss drugs is that they were constrained by supply, and that was kind of hurting their growth trajectory. Where are we now with that?
Yeah,
for Novo?
So for Novo, there are going to still be supply issues, or they're anticipating some this year. They did say that they think that they'll get off the FDA shortage list this year, which would be a big deal for them, particularly because that would hypothetically stop compounding and the rise of these knockoff weight loss drugs that are allowed when a drug is in shortage. For Novo's rival, Eli Lilly, the supply issue has been a lot better. They sort of solved that last year, and so that's something that has been important for Novo because they are still constrained by these supply issues while Lilly is not. So that's something that's going to continue to be a big theme this year, but both companies have invested billions of dollars to build out production capacity, so some of that will probably start to come online this year.
Where is the industry in coming up with an oral application, just taking a pill instead of the shot, which presumably the pill would be easier to take, maybe less side effects? Where's the industry there?
That's exactly where things are sort of heading this year. I mean, I was at a big healthcare conference a couple of weeks ago, and most of the pharma executives were saying that the biggest readout this year is Lilly's oral weight loss drug, which is called orforglipron. It's kind of a mouthful, but there's a big readout happening mid-year, a phase 3 readout, and that's going to be super important. That drug is not quite as effective as the shots, but it's still pretty good, and it's an oral drug, which is something that investors are closely watching. Novo is also working on a higher dose pill. They actually already have like a pill version of Ozempic on the market. It's called Rybelsus, but it doesn't work very well for weight loss. So they've been testing a higher version of that, but the issue has been supply again. It takes more of the active ingredient to make this pill, so they haven't been able to launch that yet. So they're hoping to file for approval this year with that as well.
So to that point, in terms of all the drugs that are out there, I know that Novo also came up short in some of their studies in terms of viability or reducing different risks. Can you walk us through kind of where we stand on that?
Yeah, so obviously the big thing for pharma is always coming up with the next big thing. They can't be satisfied with what they have right now because patents expire, and eventually they'll need to follow it up with another blockbuster. And so Lilly and Novo, even though Ozempic and Wegovy and Zepbound are really good drugs and work quite well, they need the next thing. And so Novo and Lilly are both working on next generation products. For Novo, one of the closely watched drugs is called CagriSema. And late last year, in December, they had a readout for that drug that fell short of their own bar that the company had set. They said that they were looking for 25% weight loss. This drug came in below that. I mean, it was still pretty effective. It was like 20 to 22% weight loss. That wasn't good enough for investors, and there was a pretty big reaction at the end of the year, and they've since sort of recovered. They have other next generation products that they're testing that they released results from in January, and that sort of brought them back into good favor. But we'll see what happens with these next generation products.